Hi, I'm Mr. Thompson, and I want to show you how to make a slab construction vase in 10 easy steps. Okay, so step one is just to go to Google and type in slab vase. And take a look at pictures of slab vases. The idea isn't to try to copy somebody else's vase, but just to allow yourself to be influenced by the different styles of vases that are out there and to start generating ideas before you start designing your own slab vase. There's lots of slab vases, but in this video I want to show you how to make a simple slab vase, like this one here, this one, this one, this one, this one here, and this one here. And what all those vases have in common is that it has a front face and a back face that are the same shape. And then in the middle of the vase, it's just a straight strip of clay, a skinny rectangular piece of clay that goes around the perimeter of that shape that makes up the front and the back. All right, so step number 2, draw some sketches. They don't have to be super great or fancy, but it'll help you get started designing your slab vase. Okay, so step number 3 is to draw a scale version of your vase. This is the template you're going to use to create the front and back of your vase. And in my class, this is the size I'd like you to make it. I want you to take an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, fold it in half lengthwise, and then fold over the top so that you're creating a rectangle of paper about 4 inches by 9 inches. And I'd like you to draw the shape of your vase somewhere inside this rectangle. Now when you create your vase, you might want to create a shape that's symmetric like this, or you might want to create a shape that's asymmetric. Symmetric means it's the same on both sides, and asymmetric means it's different on both sides. You might create a shape that's got curves or sharper angles or both. If you do create a symmetric shape, it can be kind of difficult to draw it perfectly the same on both sides. So what you'll want to do is fold it in half and then just cut along one side, and when you unfold it, it'll be perfectly symmetric. When you create the shape for the front and back of your vase, try not to make it any more narrow than about 1.5 inches or so, and try to leave at least 2 inches at the base so it stands up nicely. And I just want to encourage you to draw lots of different shapes for your vase, and then pick your favorite one. And I think this one's my favorite. That's the vase I'm going to make. Step 4 is to prepare a slab of clay. Make it about 1/4 inch thick and thoroughly smooth out both sides with a flexible metal rib. If you need to see more about how to get your slab ready, see my video on preparing a slab of clay. Step 5 is to cut out our template and to cut the strips of clay that will be the middle part of the vase. And for that, you could use a needle tool. I'm going to use the paper clip substitute for the needle tool that we made. And if you want to see how to make one of these, you should see the video on that. And when you're cutting, try to keep the tool relatively straight up and down, and just cut all the way around your template. Mine's made out of paper, so I'm going to try to kind of support the paper as I cut, because the paper can pretty easily, bunch up, and then I won't get an accurate cut. And I'm going to need to cut out 2 of this piece, and then I'll need to cut out enough strips to make the middle part of the vase. I want my strips to be somewhere between 2 and 3 inches. Okay, so now we're on step number 6, and this is the first one where I really feel like I'm actually building the vase. I've got all my pieces here, and what I need to do next is I need to do scratch marks and slip around the edges, and then I'll take these walls and I'll start placing the walls on top of the first surface of the vase. I'm going to have to do scratch marks and slip on the bottom side of the wall. And in here I have a pinch pot that I added some water to, and then I scrubbed at the inside of the pinch pot with a paintbrush to make some slip. I'm going to get started on this, but at some point I'll go ahead and I'll increase the speed so that the video is a bit shorter. But I'm going to do scratch marks and slip all the way around. Of course, not here on this side. That's going to be the opening top side of the vase. And once I score and slip this face of the vase and the underside of the wall I'm about to put on it, I'll start placing the wall in place. And when I put the wall in place, it's really important to try to get the wall to line up really accurately with the edge of the face of the vase here, because that's how I'm going to make sure that my vase turns out the shape that I intended it to. Okay, so I'm going to keep scoring and slipping, and then I'll start putting the wall in place. I'm about to speed up the video so that it'll be a little bit faster. Okay, so as I do this, I'm going to take care to try to make the wall I'm putting in place on top of the front surface of the vase. I want to get it to line up as perfectly as I can with this outside edge. So I'm gonna use my fingers, and before I press this and try to actually get it connected, I'm going to spend a little bit of time trying to get it lined up as accurately as I possibly can. And once I get down to the bottom here, I'm going to trim off there's a little bit of excess here. So cut that off. I want to try to make sure that the wall is straight up and down as much as I can. Okay, and now that it's in position, I'm going to grab this wall between my fingers and push down to sort of force it into the surface I'm connecting it to. Right. Last chance to try to make sure it lines up good. Alright, and then now I'll do the same thing across this other side here. And I'm going to score and slip this edge. I'm going to score and slip along here, because that's going to join it right there. And then I'll score the bottom side. Alright, so now I'm putting on the next wall. I'm going to kind of squeeze it together on the base where I bring these two sides together. And now I'm going to try to line the wall up as best I can right on the very edge of the piece I'm setting it on. And again, I have a little bit of overlap to cut off here at the very end. Okay, so step 7 is basically just that I let this piece dry up a little bit. I don't want it to dry out, but I want it to stiffen so it's not really floppy. I want it to stay pretty straight when I put it on top here. I don't want it to sink down in as I'm placing this. So I am just going to let this sit and get a little bit stiffer, and then I'll come back, I'll score across here, I'll score the underside of this piece, and I'll carefully line up this piece right here with the walls so that they match really well. Okay, so now we're ready for step number 8, which is to attach this top piece. I've let it stiffen up a bit. It's not dried out, but notice if I hold it from one side, it doesn't just flop straight down, it just bends a little bit. And what I need to do now is I need to do lots of scratch marks and slip around this whole edge, and I need to do lots of scratch marks and slip around here. But before I do that, I'm going to place this on top, and I want to make sure that the walls line up nicely with the contour of this vase. And so with it just kind of sitting on top here, where I need to, I'll push this wall in a little bit so it lines up better. I can push in here a little bit so it lines up better. And then the tricky part is over on this side, I can see that the wall's pushed in a little too far and it doesn't line up with that spot. So on that spot, I'm going to have to take my wall off, and I'll squish the wall out and try to get that to line up better before I do my scoring and slipping. So now I'll put this top face on again, and I'm going to try to coax the wall into position and get the middle wall to line up as best I can with the face. And if I have to, when I'm done, I can carve down the edges a little bit to get them to perfectly match up, but I want to get it as true to my original form as possible. So this is a point in the process that it takes a little bit of patience to sort of nudge this center wall around and try to get it to really line up with the form of the second face of the vase. Okay, so right now I'm feeling like that lines up pretty well. I'll push this back in, push this side in here, and I'm feeling like right now it all lines up pretty well. So I'm going to score and slip, and then I'm going to press this together, and after that I'm going to sew up all the seams on the outside. So for as I score and slip and push the sides together, I will go ahead and speed up that part just to make things a little faster. Okay, so I've scored and slipped everything up, and now I'm just going to turn this over, and I'm going to reline everything up as best I can, and then I'm going to press this face surface into the center wall. So I'm just using my thumb to firmly but carefully press down right on top of where the wall is. Trying to make it line up as best I can as I go. Okay, so I've pushed these together pretty well. And After I score and slip something together, I like to let it sit for a bit before I go back to working on it, to kind of let that slip set up. So I'm going to walk away from this for a while, and then I'm going to come back for the next step, which is to reinforce all these seams and try to make sure they're really strong on the outside. Okay, so we're on step number 9, and for step number 9, what we're going to do is we're going to refine the outside of our vase. So the vase it's pretty much done now. It's all assembled. I let the clay sit overnight. I just covered it with a plastic bag. When the slip was still really wet, I like to let it sit around for a bit and dry just a little bit. But now that it's all together, I can see there's some spots where I did not line up the face of the vase perfectly with the walls, so the face is sticking out a little bit here. So I want to go all the way around the vase, and I want to look at it carefully, and I want to trim anywhere the face of the vase is not even with the walls. And then I'm going to reinforce the seams by doing scratch marks across the seams, which some people call stitching the clay together. And then I'm going to take some super soft clay and I'm going to push that into the scratch marks and smooth it out. If you don't know how to make your clay super soft, see my video on making clay softer. Okay, so when I'm done with that, I want to round out the edges. I want to make sure the top's nice and even. I'll kind of scrape it down and round it off. And I'll go ahead and get started. I'll start working kind of at normal speed, but then I'll speed up the video because this is gonna take a while. So I have a fettling knife here, but you can use a butter knife. You could also, if you have to, you could use your flexible metal rib. But I'll just use my fettling knife here. And what I'm doing is I'm going to scrape down where this surface sticks out a bit from the wall and try to make it nice and even. Okay, so I'm just going to cut along here and try to get rid of that overlap. Okay, so I'm just cutting off some of that excess clay. Okay, and it's a good idea to let it sit and stiffen up a little bit after you're done assembling it so that you can handle it here at the end without kind of squishing the form. So now I've got it nice and even. The walls line up nicely with the edge. I might want to just gently scrape down around the edge a little bit to give it a nice kind of rounded, soft edge here. And then the last thing I want to do is I want to make sure that along this seam that it's really well connected together. And actually, after scraping it down, it looks pretty good. I'm not seeing the seam anymore, which is a nice sign. But I'm going to show you how to make sure that the seam is really well sealed up. And that is to do some deep scratch marks right across the seam. And then to take some super soft clay, just takes a little bit, and rub that into those scratch marks. So that kind of stitches the clay together there. And then you smooth it out. And now that seam's going to be pretty strong. I can see a little spot up here at the top where I can kind of see the seam. So again, I'll stitch across it, and then I'll add a little bit of soft clay into those scratch marks. And then I'm going to rub over it with my finger lots of times to kind of compress the clay. And that'll help make it stronger in there. Okay, so I'm just going to keep working. I'll kind of speed the video up, and I'll just keep refining all these seams. Okay, so now I have stitched the seams together. I've carved off the excess clay where the faces of the vase kind of overlapped where the walls were. And now I'm just going to dip my fingers in some water and I'm just going to kind of scrub over the surfaces in a circular pattern everywhere to sort of do a finish smoothing. I want to get rid of any little pit holes or scratches and things in the surface. And I'm just going to try to get my surfaces as nice and smooth as I can. Okay, so I've stitched the seams together. I've trimmed the edges. I've scrubbed over the surfaces with my fingers with a little bit of water on them. The last thing I want to do is I want to kind of scrape down around the edge here and round out this edge and make sure it's even and there's no little spots like this one right here. Okay, so I've evened out the top of the vase and now I'm just going to gently scrape down the edges around the top so that there's a nice kind of rounded surface to the edges. And then I'll kind of scrub over these surfaces with my fingers with a little bit of water on my fingers to finish them off. Okay, and now my vase is finished. I've smoothed off all the surfaces and edges. I've evened things out. I've gotten rid of little scratches and removed any little globs of clay stuck to the surface. Just one more step to go, and that is to talk about decoration. All right, so this is the final step, decorating the vase. And there's a number of decorative techniques that I'm going to want to talk about, and I don't want to go into detail on those right now. In class, we talked about sgraffito and slip inlay. I'll be talking about the use of underglazes. But right now, I just want to emphasize that we've put a lot of work into making this vase. and we should also put a fair amount of work into decorating it. So what I've done is I've taken the template I used to create the vase, and I use that to draw a picture on top of that surface. And initially I was going to draw some flowers and patterns on the surface, but when I looked at this template, it reminded me of sort of the side profile of a funny little figure. And so I just kind of went with that, and I drew some details, like this was like a little person, and I'm going to start scratching details like that on my vase. When you scratch designs into the surface of your vase, you want the clay to be pretty stiff, not totally dried out, but kind of stiff so that the clay doesn't stick to itself. And I will go ahead and start scratching my picture on the vase, and again I'll speed things up a little bit so that the video doesn't get too long. Okay, so that's it. That's my decorated vase. After this is fired, I'm going to put some black underglaze into these lines so they show up nicely when it's glazed. Hey, I just want to say thanks again for watching this video, and please give me a like if you liked it, and definitely subscribe so you see my other videos I'll be putting out soon. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.